What is person-centered planning? Kind of a loaded question, I understand.
The person-centered planning grew out of a passionate concern to support people with developmental disabilities in discovering and contributing their gifts. It's something that's been really misunderstood, I think, over the last 20 or 30 years. Right? People have kind of tried to turn it into something that comes out of school, so it's like an IEP for an adult, so it happens every year, so it's kind of annualized and ritualized and often embedded in the agency practices rather than being about the person. So some of the work that I think we've been doing is kind of healing people up from those experiences. And for lots of people, person-centered planning was an alternative, and we still talk about this, it was an alternative kind of institutional planning. People who didn't work in institutions and have always worked in the community have had the experience of planning with people where you're only able to offer them 3 options because that's all you've got, right? And so that's not person-centered planning. So institutional planning is where there's often a big stack of papers, people can't read them, and so you've got all the power, and they're kind of sitting at that end of the room, and there's like 9 professionals around them telling them what to do, and you start off with this list. Here's all the things that went wrong last year, and you've worked on these things, so you're now down to 40% behaviors or 50% behaviors, or something like that. Person-centered planning is often seen as merely not institutional planning, and I think that has done it a real disservice, right?
I think what we do when we're doing person-centered planning is, even in the guise of an agency, we're asking people to resist doing that, to do that. Let's get the check boxes. Let's satisfy all of the people all of the bodies that are, asking us in our service provision. We ask people to resist all of that, shift all the focus off of that to the person. It's not the job of the person to figure out how can what you do for me satisfy those bodies. Right? So
that's the fulcrum point, the discovery and contribution of gifts.
So if you define your gift as something that helps you to connect with at least one other person in a meaningful way, it helps people to relax about, I'm not a pianist, I'm not, and for the people around them as well, to start to look in a different way at who that person is and what they're here to do, what they're on this earth to do. If we walk away and a person is maybe even just connected with that idea and connected with some of the things that they do in a gifted way, then I feel like the process has been a worthwhile one. We have the luxury of process, if you will, that can look different for every person, depending on who they are, who their network is, what's happening, sort of where they are along the spectrum of things as well.
I think a lot of the processes really work for folks who are in that position, right? So, because we're not going in to tell them anything, we're going in to listen to them. And so Shelley in particular really holds the space, right? And so then they can kind of lean into that space in whatever way they want. And the other thing, I'm hesitant about the idea of self-determination these days, because I think that the focus could be more on interdependence. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure that independence has taken us where we really wanted to go, and that a lot of people have ended up quite isolated and alone, right? If we look at the kinds of lessons that people with disabilities teach us in these planning sessions, there's these different factors that you can see that there's an invitation, so the isolation's reduced, there's graphics, and so you've got different modalities for communication, and there's a space for people to speak into rather than to be kind of told.
One of my goals in PATH, often, or in any sort of conversation, is to ask some questions to sort of bring people to a space where they understand that they have the same values. Often our values will be around making contribution, having choice. It all sort of comes down to what love is in the room, right? As people start to realize, this isn't about, the picture I had in my mind. This is really about this person's human drive and human want to make a contribution or to have more people in their lives or whatever it is. So it can be about the values, can help people to connect and then sort of get that energy to move forward with whatever the dream